No, it's not that, Morgaine said as he turned to her. Then, why is the eclipsed citadel stuck in eternal twilight? He asked, curious, and he responded, turning to look at the sky. She said it's due to the existence of us fallen angels. The eclipsed citadel wasn't our first city when we arrived on Endearth. We once had a place called Aurian Spot, where we all stayed before eventually deciding to move to the eclipsed citadel. When we were in Aurian Spot, the sky changed to twilight too, and when we left it, it receded to its previous blue color. The longer we stayed in any of those two cities, the quicker the sky changed into a color of twilight. Almost like our existence is influencing nature itself, she explained to him, as a gleam of light silently crossed his irises. I never thought of that before. To think it was due to the existence of the fallen angels that made the sky turn into twilight, and it wasn't just some natural phenomenon like he thought. He turned to look at the sky, and now he realized. So, the twilight above the sky of Amamora is due to the existence of the fallen angels. And as for the golden particles mixed in with them, he said, pausing, but she completed it. It must be due to the existence of the angels. Just like us, their existence may also be influencing the nature of Amamora, she said, sure of her words, and Ryuk nodded in agreement. But then, it crossed his mind. But why? He suddenly spoke, turning to her. Why does the fallen angel's existence make the sky go twilight? The sky of the vampires, werewolves, or titans never changed, even when they came to Endearth. So why? He asked, confused, but then she shook her head. I don't know. Neither does my mother nor any fallen I've ever spoken to. She completed as Ryuk silently hummed. Perhaps there's more to the fallen angels than I, or even most of them, understand? He thought, a smile making its way to the corner of his lips. But, Morgaine suddenly called, as he turned to her, watching as she also turned to him before asking, if our existence somehow influences nature, when many others don't, it must be because there's something special about us. No? She asked, and he nodded. Yes. I think you're even more special than us. Ryuk? She suddenly said, and he paused. So, I've been thinking, if you're even more special than us fallen angels, are you sure your existence couldn't, in some way, be influencing the nature around you? She asked, as Ryuk felt a sudden thump in his chest. Quickly enough, it began growing louder. But he was quick to calm it down as he replied, well, the sky definitely isn't changing due to my existence, he said with a bit of a laugh, and Morgaine giggled. Maybe your case is a special one, more than just changing the sky color. Who knows? She said, as Ryuk slowly nodded, his hand reaching for his slowly quieting heart. Who knows? But what I know for sure is something is definitely changing just by you being around me, she spoke up. He turned to her, noticing a faint pink blush at the corner of her cheeks, even though her expression was filled with conviction and confidence in her words. Stop being too melodramatic. You'll make me turn red, he said, a faint red dusting his cheeks, as her devilish smirk quickly returned. She stepped closer to him, leaning in to give him a deep kiss. It was the only way she knew to release the emotions that lay deep in her chest, one that she couldn't find words for. Towards the end, her hands grabbed his, fingers interlocking before she slowly pulled back. Let's go to sleep, she whispered, before racing back to the door, dragging him along with her as both disappeared into the house, the balcony door shutting close. 5 minutes later, after they both disappeared into the house, the veil of the sky above the castle faintly rippled, and from within, one would faintly see a ginormous golden eye staring right at the balcony where they had just vanished, before also fading away in a blink. 10,000 meters away, on a singular golden-colored building. "Ah, how sweet!" The feminine words rang out, as a golden footage flashed before the gaze of two angels standing on the upper base of the building. On the panel, it showed the image of Ryuk and Morgaine disappearing back into the castle, before it slowly faded away, retreating into the palm of one of them. It was a masculine angel, with a total of 6 golden wings folded behind him. His golden eyes were as calm as the deepest of lakes, and if a mortal dared to look into them for long, they would forever find themselves stuck in its everlasting swirl of golden motes of light dancing in their depths. His expression was neutral as his outstretched hand slowly closed, the panel disappearing into his palm, which had opened up in the shape of an eye. The same eye that had appeared close to Ryuk and Morgaine's location. It dropped by his side. Turning his head, he found his other, a female angel, with a total of 6 golden wings, just like him, but stretched behind her. Her eyes twinkled with light and nostalgia. A gentle smile on her face, but he wasn't moved at all by her. She could feel his stare, and she turned to him, suddenly vanishing to appear before him with her hands gripping his clothes. "Tell me, Soren, don't you think they're so sweet together? Their love is so pure, don't you think?" she said with a twinkling smile, as the man's outstretched hand reached out, grabbing hers, which was holding tightly to his cloth, before unwrapping it off him and placing it back to her side. "We were given an order to watch over her, not form opinions, Aurelia. And I'll advise you to stick to the given mission. TCH, you can't be helped." Aurelia retorted with a disappointed huff as she watched Soren move closer to the edge and sit on the railings, waiting. "So," she said, closing in on him and pausing when she reached the railings. "We're just going to stay here, looking blankly at the ground?" she asked him as Soren shrugged. "We have to stick to the mission," he said uncompromisingly. It resulted in Aurelia scratching her jaw with a lost expression, something Soren picked up on as he turned to her with a raised eyebrow. "Don't tell me you didn't read the report at all," he said out loud in disbelief, watching her confused expression. "TSK, idiot," he thought inwardly, but the weight of the mission was serious enough for him to break his peace. "Let me run you through it, for the last time," he said as she beamed. "Our mission is simple. Just 2 tasks," he said, pausing to look at Aurelia, who nodded 20 times in 3 seconds. "Firstly, we watch over the soon-to-be-chosen, ensure no harm comes upon her until she reaches the Dominaire royal grounds, while also keeping an eye on her every move and gathering as much information as possible," he said, and she bobbed her head once more. Soren nodded before turning his head downward. "So, what's the second task?" she asked, and snapped his head to her in shock. "What the? But I just said it," he replied, watching her confused expression grow. You did?" she asked, confused, as he groaned in pain before replying. "Let's simplify it like this. My mission is to watch her every move and pick up as much as I can about her. Your mission is to make sure no harm comes upon her until she reaches the Dominaire royal grounds. You get it now?" Soren asked, watching as her eyes lit up. Oh, that makes sense now. Good. Why am I in charge of making sure no harm comes upon her, though? That should be a male job, no?" she asked, confused. Soren replied with a shrug. "You're 2 times stronger than me. At least," he said flatly, then turned to her. "Don't tell me you forgot that," he said with an unbelievable gaze, but the confused light in her eyes was all he needed to know. "Wow," Soren called out in shock before shaking his head. "Your family possesses a pseudo-divine grade law anomaly, but now I understand why no one ever wishes to be born as a Loosemore. What's the point of so much power at the cost of rapid forgetfulness?" he said, his voice filled with pity as he turned to look at the ground where various fallen angels scrambled around. "Such things are not important anyway. Why keep it in your head all the time?" she said with an uncaring scoff, resulting in a huff from Soren. "Yeah, right. The mission assigned by the vice prac of the Dominaire family to pick up their future chosen isn't an important one," he mumbled beneath his breath. Only he knew if they failed the mission, their status would most likely fall lower than even ordinary fallen angels, something as bad as a death sentence. He'll most likely spend his life in a cave after that due to the shame. They can't afford any mistakes. He most especially can't allow that. "So, you said your mission is to, Aurelia said, but paused again, as Soren sighed tiredly before replying. Watch her every move and pick up as much as I can about her? He completed. Yes, right. I was just about to say that. Of course you were. He replied cynically, but it didn't bother her as she exclaimed. So, what are the things you've gotten down about her? She asked, and Soren's eyebrows furrowed. Why do you ask? You'll forget in 30 seconds anyway. He said with a shrug, but his spine chilled when he saw the railing he sat on squeeze slightly and audibly fracture as he turned to look at the beaming Aurelia, whose hands gripped the railing tightly, her hands slowly morphing to form claws. Because I'm bored. I need to do something to direct my want of crushing something, she said, resulting in a chill that traveled down Soren's spine. How did I get stuck with this maniac in the first place? He thought, but then responded. After all, he was the closest thing to her. What if she forgot they were mission partners and decided to crush the thing closest to her? He'd be getting screwed over then. I've gotten a couple of things down about her, he said, waving his right hand as a hologram materialized out of his outstretched palm. Oh really, what do you have? Aurelia bubbled, her face bursting from behind and appearing a few inches before the holograph. She has so much energy. Well, the first thing I got is that she's the only child, and the other person that came with them doesn't have a familial connection to her, contrary to the reports we got, or hoped, Soren explained to Aurelia, who continued nodding expectantly. And the second thing is, her relationship with him, since it's not familial, has to be romantic. Oh, romantic, Aurelia called out as Soren rolled his eyes. That sounds so beautiful, no? She asked, and Soren shrugged. Maybe. But it won't be soon enough. I can already see it collapsing, Soren said without a care in the world. But the same couldn't be said for Aurelia, whose eyes colored in confusion. Why do you say that? She asked. Well, I don't know. Because the girl is too valuable to be married off to some lesser wild world animal. He asked, his voice lacking empathy or concern. Lesser wild world animal? He doesn't seem like an animal. If anything, he looks very handsome to me. He wouldn't pale to many of the angels in terms of beauty, she explained as Soren chuckled mockingly. Handsome? Ha ha ha. When has that ever been a factor about familial fusion? He asked in mockery, but she was adamant. So why did you call him a lesser wild world animal? Why is he less valuable? She asked, confused, as he sighed in tiredness but still forced to reply. You see, the girl is the soon-to-be-chosen one of the Dominaire family, and not only that, she has a bloodline purity of 87.9%. The current highest among the Dominaire family, and most likely ever recorded in their entire existence. She's more than valuable, not only as a chosen bloodline lighter, but as an important tool for family fusion. So, because she has a purer bloodline than most, she can no longer live with the one she wants a romantic life with? Yes, Soren said curtly, wanting to end the conversation there already. But Aurelia finally had something she considered interesting and wasn't stopping anytime soon. He groaned inwardly when her next question came. But is that fair? Imagine the pain of leaving the one you loved, simply because you were discovered to possess a valuable bloodline. Doesn't that sound unfair to you, Soren? She said, suddenly gripping his arm. He tried to wriggle free but failed in the end. What's this even got to do with me? I'm just here to watch over them. It may, logically, sound a little bit unfair. A little bit? Aurelia said in disbelief, staring at him like he was a monster. Her hands holding him instantly withdrew as if they had been shocked by a high voltage, resting on the railing, which all of a sudden began to disperse into golden dust. No, I mean it's bad. Of course it's bad, sure, it's very bad, Soren rapidly replied, a line of sweat dropping down the back of his neck when he saw the golden motes of light, what the thick railing was once made of. That's the Lusmore's golden erasure energy, capable of outright erasing things down to their molecular level and making them appear as if they never existed. Monster. Soren thought silently, smiling apologetically at Aurelia, who humphed. Why did you say it's just a little bit unfair previously? Well, that's how the fallen angels have always done their things. Really? Aurelia asked. He nodded. They try to breed stronger and stronger generations. Those with strong bloodlines are forced to marry others from similarly strong families, especially if they're both bloodline lighters. If two bloodline lighters marry and breed, their offspring have a higher chance of awakening a bloodline that will even surpass the parents. And if that one too breeds with another powerful offspring, the cycle continues through generations, each generation stronger than the last. You understand? Sounds mundane, Aurelia claimed, but Soren shook his head, turning to her with a serious expression. No, it's one of the fallen angels' smartest moves. Huh. By cross-fusing the strongest bloodlines among their various families, they created stronger generations, more powerful fallen angels with raw, higher potential. It's the only reason the fallen angels have not yet been crushed by us angels. If they didn't recycle their strongest bloodlines, they'd have no powerful generation left, and then it would only be a matter of time before their scary elders died off, and the new generation would be at the mercy of us angels. This isn't some lovey-dovey, mundane issue. This is the lifeline of their existence, Soren said, before he paused, turning to look in the direction where they had been assigned to spy. That's why I think their relationship will turn sour soon. The Dominaire family values her right now more than anything in the world, as she's the best bloodline lighter possessed in close to several past generations. And other top families will be willing to pay an arm just to have their own bloodline lighter fuse with her. She might just be the best negotiation tool they've gotten in close to 500 centuries. And the dude she's currently with is from an aboriginal from a wild world. Their values do not even come close to equating, and the family will find a way to break that relationship, directly or indirectly. If he had been an angel, they might have tried to get a backdoor, since the angels would consider that a stain on their reputation and a challenge to their authority. But he's unfortunately not, and not from a rival race that the fallen angels should have been wary of. Nobody will come for him, making things even easier. That sounds so sad, Aurelia said, and Soren shrugged. It is, since they seem so love-dovey. The dude seems to take her seriously. But at least he's not being outright sentenced to death like those who dared lay hands on any Chusan bloodline lighter. He's gotten from her more than just a couple of touches, and they even kissed, and hopefully more. So I'd say, even if they got parted, he's still quite the lucky guy Soren said, cackling like an idiot. But then he winced when he felt the elbow nudge his side ribs. Hey! He yelped out, looking at Aurelia, who humphed, displeased. He might be helpless, but I'm sure he'll find a way to get justice. I know it, Aurelia said with clenched fists as Soren gave a side-eye glance before turning back to the sight before him. He'll just get himself killed if he tries too hard. It's not worth it. It never is. Shimmer, rays of frozen moonlight, along with sprinkles of golden light, infiltrated the cozy bedroom through the glass panel. At the center of the massive bedroom, two figures could be seen, both seemingly asleep, their gentle breaths echoing softly off the walls. A faint ripple of crimson-red energy emerged as Ryuk opened his eyes to the white ceiling above his head. The chandelier gleamed in the moonlight's rays, casting a surreal glow over the room. But then, there was a different thought in his head. Hey, system, he thought, watching the golden panel silently shift out of the void and hover before him. Yes, host. I haven't settled everything from the last level up, right? He asked. Yes. The host has not allocated the obtained attribute points and also has not checked out his newly awakened skills. The words flashed and he silently agreed. He had not allocated the attribute points, but that was partly because he hadn't been in the right place to do so. He knew allocating so many attribute points would lead to a massive energy ripple and could bring destruction to his surroundings like last time. Secondly, he didn't need them right now, as everything was going smoothly, and there wasn't some nightmarish existence hunting him down in his dreams. So it wasn't a pressing need. But the skills, he was curious about that. Activate Skills and Abilities tab. Skills and abilities. The two radiant tabs shimmered into view before him, and Ryuk's eyes gleamed with expectation. He was naturally drawn toward the new skills tab. It was the very reason he'd summoned the interface. But then he paused. He remembered the special evolution cards, and more importantly, the ability upgrade card he had obtained. Let me see if I can upgrade or combine some of my old abilities into something better. With that thought, he focused on the old skills tab. Immediately, a long column of glowing text unfolded before him, stretching farther than expected. Even for Ryuk, the sheer number made him momentarily dizzy. His lips curled into a faint smile, half disbelief, half pride. Old skills. Elemental skills category A. Frost cultivation. True skill. Tyrant form. Frostborn Calamity Dragon. Type. Lesser Draconic Apex transformation. Description. A fusion of frozen physique, sovereign of eternal frost, and glacial essence derived from Isha's evolutionary core. This transformation manifests the user into a towering frostborn dragon, cloaked in glacial wings and scales that shimmer like diamond ice, surrounded by a perpetual blizzard that bends the laws of reality. Effects. Size. Up to 60 meters long, 30-meter wingspan. Divine ice scales. Immune to elemental damage. Reflects fire-based attacks with 2x amplified force. Absolute zero aura. Freezes both physical and conceptual elements, e.g., sound, momentum, time shifts. Signature attack. Glacial Cataclysm. Rains frozen Skyforged spikes with enough force to level a city. Special breath. Cryo-annihilation beam. Erases existence through a concentrated frost energy beam. Cooldowns. Glacial Cataclysm. 1 hour. Cryo beam. Consumes 50% stamina. Now only consumes 10% due to host's increase in power. Domain expansion. Winter's Solace. Void mutation skills. Infused from the void line of the Azura Voids, these are unnatural evolutions birthed from abyssal entropy. Mutation 1. Abyssal Claws. Void-infused talons that shred physical, magical, and divine barriers. Mutation 2. Void Step Legs. Grants instant microteleportation. Removes physical friction and inertia. Mutation 3. Abyssal Gaze Void Truth Eye. Reveals hidden forces and illusions, even divine level. Sees through deception and dimensional veils. Can rend space to glimpse parallel realities. Cooldown. 10 minutes. Mutation 4. Monarch's Core. Spinal Throne of the Void King. Spinal column transforms into void metal spires crowned with emberlight. Grants. Void Reversal Pulse. Reflects 50% of damage received. Void Amplification. Stores one attack and unleashes it with increased force. Immunity to stun, disable, and paralysis upon activation. Domain Expansion. Nether Crown, Throne of the Dying Star. Summons a sentient void realm. Every 30 seconds, the user may rewrite one rule of reality inside the domain, e.g., reverse light, erase healing, negate flight. Utility skill. Void Vortex. Opens portals to summon/store energy, matter, or tools across spatial coordinates. Aetheris Bloodline skills. Subtype. Draconic Supremacy. Skill. Draconic Overdrive. Type. Forbidden Transformation. Transforms the user into a hulking 50-meter giant, encasing them in Jade Dragon armor. Note: height increase is no longer possible due to the existence of the host skeletal system, more than capable of containing the energy required without a skeletal lengthening. Boosts STR/AGI/END by plus 5,000 each. Skill. Draconic Grave March. Type. Draconic Mindform Technique. Each step creates a 5-meter domain of pressure with plus 200x gravity. Active only when walking. Ends if airborne or motionless. Nanobody skills. Sovereign Rewriting. Allows molecular restructuring of non-living matter within 5 meters. Limit: 50 kilograms mass per 5 seconds. Cannot affect living beings or complex energy systems, yet Abyssal Null Bloodline Skills. Primordial Lineage. Null of Destruction. True Skill. Tyrant Form Null of Destruction. Level 1. Type. Apex Annihilation Form. Transforms user into a 7-meter-tall humanoid null tyrant with crimson entropy markings. Form effects. Immune to all damage types. Physical, elemental, divine, spiritual. Fearlock Aura. Triggers mental collapse in lower beings. Anti-Regan Claws. Sever regeneration and penetrate dimensional barriers. Signature abilities. Law of Destruction Terminal Execution. Erases a 100-meter cone of reality in one swipe. Cooldown. 1 hour. Roar of Nullity. Freezes nearby enemy systems, senses, and abilities for 12 seconds. Costs 65% stamina. Drawback. After 10 minutes, risks corruption overflow, which forces descent into primal instinct and loss of identity. So the transformation into a null already has its own Nullic skill tab, and it even comes with a special skill set too. I didn't even know about that. Ryuk thought to himself as he reread the skill info. It was very powerful now that he read about it, and his previous use of it during his battle with Zarkul was the barest minimum. But then, his eyes furrowed a bit when he continued down and noticed the flashing red button below the skill panels. System Notice. Notice. The host is advised to consider fusion of compatible skills to reduce system complexity and open paths toward Eternity-class evolutions. Skill slots occupied. 18. Suggested maximum before system instability. 24. 18? But I only counted 11. Ryuk replied, but the panel appeared. There are 11 to host only because there are 11 distinct, named abilities or transformations that the host actively sees and uses. 18 is correct as the system treats each subpower or passive as its own functionally unique module. The system replied as Ryuk hummed silently to himself. So, if it reaches 24, there'll be an instability from you? Ryuk asked, and it flashed before him once more. Actually, the 18 skill slots are occupied by the host's old skills. There are 4 more new skills, which means all the slots have already been occupied. The system is still stable since the threshold has only been achieved, not surpassed, but crossing the threshold will lead to 1. System cascade error. Conflicting abilities will cause recursive feedback loops. Symptoms. Random skill activations, temporal hiccups, and involuntary domain leaks. 2. Existence tearing. The host's body may forcibly fuse or reject abilities at the molecular or dimensional level. Results: permanent physical mutations or void implosion. 3. Null awakening risk. Critical. Overload may prematurely awaken dormant null instincts. Full regression into apex predatory state is expected, and host identity may be overridden. Recommendation: fuse related skills or purge minor mutations immediately. Alternate option: trigger class evolution if criteria are met. Failure to act will result in irreversible outcomes. Wow, this is more serious than I thought. Ryuk thought to himself, his heartbeat unconsciously increasing by a few beats. Yes, host. It is a serious issue. A normal cultivator only has so many skills, at most 7. To increase this, they need tools. Armors, weapons, artifacts, and other similar objects that allow them to activate pre-installed skills within them. The realization dawned on Ryuk. When he had fought Zarkul, the Null Calamity, the creature wielded a staff that activated his abilities. Being able to unleash so many techniques likely had something to do with the artifact. The same could be said for High Scholar Emeries, who had both a brush and a grimoire to summon various abilities. Even the Ruin Guardian possessed a staff for his techniques, and Antares, too, had an axe along with gauntlets. Only now was it occurring to him. He was the only one who never needed a weapon or an artifact and still faced each of them head-on with no problem. But the host has 24 skill slots, which is already beyond what would be normally possible for a cultivator, even with multiple artifacts. The host must maintain this limit and not surpass it, or the consequences listed earlier will begin to occur. The system ended its warning, and he nodded internally. Fine, I'll create some space. But eventually, I'll get more skills once I fuse with new body parts. It'll surpass the limits no matter how many skills I try to combine now. Ryuk mused worriedly. But then, the system interrupted. There is a high probability that acquiring new body parts will lead to an increase in skill slots. The host should not worry about that for now. He exhaled, relaxing slightly, before focusing once again on his skill tabs. Let's fuse some skills then. But wait, you mentioned something about The panel shifted back up. Yes, a class evolution? What's that? He asked. A class evolution is an upgrade protocol that can be used on a particular skill category. Let's take your elemental skill as an example. If you possess a class evolution, you can use it, and it will absorb all your ice skills to produce one skill that encompasses or surpasses the combined strength of those skills. Like a class level up, but you don't have one. As the lights dimmed slightly in his eyes, Ryuk muttered, I'll make do with what I have for now. Host must also realize that not all skills can be fused. Only 5 can be fused right now. Oh? Show me the ones I can fuse then. Fusion-eligible skills. Tyrant Form, Frostborn Calamity Dragon. Void Vortex. Draconic Overdrive. Draconic Grave March. Sovereign Rewriting. Ability Upgrade Cards. 101. Special Evolution Cards. 2. Just 2 Special Evolution Cards. I can release 2 more spaces at least. Then, I'll combine some skills. The first skills I want combined are the 2 Draconic Transformation skills I have. You mean Draconic Overdrive and Frostborn Calamity Dragon? Yes, both of them are 2 of the strongest Draconic skills in my arsenal. If I can join them, I should get something even more powerful. Host's choice has been recognized. What is the other skill host wishes to conjoin? None of the remaining fusible skills will give me anything good. Ryuk muttered to himself, looking at the list. The skills just didn't synergize well, and he felt they were better off remaining separate. In the end, he made his choice. That's the only skill I'll fuse for now. I'll bide my time and try to get my other parts quickly so I can unlock more skills. For now, I'll leave just 1 space open. The system notification reappeared. System notification. Special skill fusion in progress. Skill evolution card detected. Initiating fusion sequence. Skills selected. Tyrant Form, Frostborn Calamity Dragon. Draconic Overdrive. This is a high-risk, high-potential fusion between 2 forbidden-tier draconic transformations. Warning. Time required, 5 hours. System cooling period enforced. Fusion compatibility, 97.9%. Fusion rank. Apocrypha class skill fusion. Beyonder pathway unlocked. Fusion logic recognized. Merge the colossal elemental destruction of the Tyrant Frost Dragon with the raw ancestral overload of the Jade Dragon's overdrive. Stabilizing. Splicing skill DNA. Weaving bloodline affinity threads. Estimated completion. 4 hours. 59 minutes. Seems like I'll have to wait a couple of hours. Fine by me. Now, let's get to the other skill panel. Ryuk ordered, watching the countdown fade off, replaced by... His attention was magnified onto the new skills tab, and it quickly shifted, a new set of text appearing before him. Host has awakened a total of 2 new draconic skills from obtaining his skeletal system, along with 2 new nullic ones. Skill name, Skyvane Lattice. Type, Draconic Perception Trait. Level 1. Description, life reveals its threads to you. Sense all living things in a 300-meter radius as glowing veins of motion and essence. May link to 1 entity per day for emotional or predictive sync. Unnatural or false life glows erratically or frays at the edge. Verdict. Truth bleeds through the veins of life. Skill name, Pale Womb of Embers. Type, Draconic Cocoon Skill. Level 1. Description, once per day, Enter a 10-second stasis cocoon. You become untouchable during this time. Upon exit, your next skill or strike deals plus 25% damage and bypasses cooldown. Verdict: from stillness, the world ends faster. These, Ryuk muttered to himself as he reread the skill descriptions 3 times, yet still found them difficult to fully comprehend. Hey system, can you help by further breaking down the skill set and stating exactly what they mean in terms more comprehensible to me, please? It seems like the host's lacking intelligence stat is starting to become an issue. The light in his eyes dimmed right after. But the system will further explain both skills, just this once. The system responded, as Ryuk rolled his eyes, watching as the skills appeared again in a separate, simplified panel. Below is a more simplified version of both skills. Skill name: Skyvane Lattice. Type: Draconic Perception Trait. Category: Innate, Passive Insight. What it really means: this is the host beginning to awaken a dragon's omniscient vision. Not physical sight, but the ability to feel life itself. It makes you harder to ambush, but more importantly, it's spiritual. After all, dragons are sovereigns not just of strength, but of awareness. Its effects include a 300 m life detection radius, reflecting a draconic predator's sixth sense, honed to feel heartbeats, movement, even intentions. The emotional/predictive link can foreshadow betrayal, or let the user understand enemies and allies mid-battle. Unnatural life glows erratic, meaning clones, illusions, undead, and corrupted vessels stand out like beacons. In short, it adds a hunter's intelligence to the host's otherwise monstrous form. It explained, and a light of realization dawned in Ryuk's eyes. He understood it now. So, it's like, I don't see them, but I feel them, Ryuk said slowly. I know if something's off and maybe even better predict what they'll do next by being able to be in their shoes. Exactly, host. Wow, it's unlike any skill I previously possessed, he mused to himself. Almost all of his old skills, in one way or the other, had something to do with battle or fighting. But this? A perception skill? That wasn't what he expected at all. Now that I get that, let's move to the next one. Skill name: Pale Womb of Embers. Type: Draconic Cocoon Skill. Category: Stasis/Burst Offense. What it really means: this is the dragon holding its breath before destruction. A moment of stillness before it erupts. The cocoon lasts 10 seconds, making the host completely invulnerable, untouchable by any attack. During this time, the host disappears, as if removed from the world itself. Enemies may waste their strongest moves on nothing. Then, when he returns, his next action has no cooldown even if it's an ultimate skill. That action is also plus 25% stronger than usual. It's like a ritual of rebirth. Vanish, survive, then strike harder than ever. This is a lifesaver, Ryuk muttered to himself in disbelief. He could imagine if he had been beaten and, just when the final strike that would be enough to rip off his life is about to be dealt, he suddenly disappears. For 10 seconds, which is enough time to prepare for a counterattack. And the next skill he unleashes when he arrives back is 25% stronger than normal? That would be incredibly devastating to his enemies, who would have thought they had his life in their hands, only for their ultimate attack to be wasted. And then he comes back to end them even stronger. I never thought such a skill would be possible. True, it's a rare skill, but don't be foolish. There's no such thing as an invincible skill in this world. There might be laws out there that could stop you from activating any skill. Then you'll be cleaved through before you can even call them out. If you think a skill could make you invincible, then it's only a matter of time before life screws you over. The system said, watering down Ryuk's immortality fantasy. TCH. Thanks for the reminder, oh mighty system. You always know the good time for your advice, he replied in mockery, but the system shrugged it off. I'm simply doing my job, Ryuk. No need to feel indebted. Tisk, indebted my ass. Let's get back to what we're doing. The draconic skills are 2. One is a perception skill that allows me to feel life in a 300-meter radius, making me able to not only see but feel them, and for 30 seconds put myself in their shoes and feel their emotional state, and hence predict their next moves. And the second is like an evasive skill that makes me disappear completely for 10 seconds, avoiding all and any attacks, only to come back and have my next skill increased by 25% in damage. A perfect evasive ability. Now, let's get to the other two skills I obtained, the new null skills. He ordered, and immediately the panel changed. Skill name, Nemery. Level 1. Type, Beyondernullic Bloodline Art. Effect, once per day, reach into a timeline erased by the world itself. Retrieve a power, answer, or weapon from a version of yourself that no longer exists. Use it for 60 seconds, then it vanishes. Effect warning. Each use increases fracture level. Current fracture level 1. Each use unhinges reality. Verdict. It ended long before it began, but you carry the print. Nullic Skill 2. Skill name Heir of Nitherian. Level 1 type, Nullic Possession Skill. Effect, once per day, awaken the buried throne of Nitherian, one of destruction's ancient bearers. Allow a fragment of his will to rise through you. Your consciousness recedes and he fights in your stead. For 10 seconds, he will remain and be able to wield one technique from Nitherian's era. You see through your own eyes, but your hands are no longer yours. Effect warning. Each use increases influence level. Current influence level 1. Verdict. He is written in the black between stars, and when you call him, the cosmos starts to forget that you ever belonged. What are these? Ryuk asked in dumb shock, staring blankly at the golden panel before him. Your new Nullic skills. I know that, but... Wait, can you try to simplify them better like you did before? No, I can't. The system replied. Why can't you? You just did the same for the Draconic skills, right? True. But I can't interpret your Nullic skills, because I don't understand them either, it said, leaving him in stunned silence. But somehow, he felt the system knew more, just trying to ignore him, probably to get back at him for not increasing its intelligence stat. So he shrugged it off. In the end, he could only swipe down the panel and reread the first Nullic skill. Yet, even after 5 readings, he barely understood what was being said. Namora. That doesn't even sound like a null skill name, and it allows me to venture through past dimensions and take something from them, which can be used for 60 seconds in reality? It sounds so complex, yet so simple too, he thought, hoping to invoke a system panel to explain more, but it showed nothing. And in the end, Ryuk decided, I guess there's only one way to find out. Activate. Activate Throne Shift. In an instant, the command was given in his mind. He felt his consciousness slipping from him, his heartbeat quieting down to a level where it could barely be felt. For a few seconds, darkness was all that assaulted his mind. But then, his eyes opened to the sight of a dimly lit room, with blue fluorescent lights all around him. Ryuk turned to look around, noticing the glowing blue pool of water where he sat. He was back in his main body. He slowly rose to his feet amidst the crackling noise of his joints, an effect of having remained in the same position for quite a long time. He walked out of the pool, and a new cloth appeared in his grasp and he swiftly donned it on, then reached for the door knob. A soft click, and it opened up, revealing his room, which was currently quite the scene. The room seemed to have somehow been flipped upside down from how he remembered it. The soft, round couch had long claw marks slashed across its surface. The wardrobe was gouged in the same way. And the bed? It was half covered in frost and dark furs, like something out of a beast's den. It felt like entering a kid's room that had been ravaged by a wild pet. I guess this is what happens when you leave a frost wyvern and a void panther unchecked in the same room, he thought, but then his hand stretched toward the bed, and a void vortex appeared. Quickly, all the frost particles and fur were sucked in. Another void vortex opened up outside in the void, spitting the debris out. His etherius will spread outward, and all the scattered objects lying on the ground floated upwards, as if suspended by invisible hands before each was returned to their rightful place. The bed covers were arranged properly, along with the pillows. Barely 20 seconds had passed, and the room was restored to exactly how he remembered it. Well, aside from the claw marks, there was nothing he could do about those, so he let it be. He turned toward the room's exit and exited. The sight that met him. A single figure standing before the central holographic projection, beside a Void Panther. It was none other than Void, and beside him stood Elder Selene, both engrossed in the footage before them, not even noticing Ryuk's presence, until he was right beside them. His hand tapped on a side footage, and it quickly revealed the image of the Void. "Ryuk, you're out of your seclusion?" Elder Selene's voice rang out as he nodded and turned to Void. "I asked you to wake me up if something's wrong, no?" he said. The Void Panther catwalked to him, rubbing its tail along Ryuk's side, only for Ryuk to push it off with a single finger. "Chill out. Isha, Antares, and Rak are already out there. They should be enough to deal with those mongrels," Void said with a shrug. But then, boom! Suddenly, a heavy tremor shook the entire ship, tilting it violently to one side. Elder Selene was flung from her stance, soaring toward the side wall. But before impact, a vortex opened on her path, and she vanished into it, reappearing beside Ryuk, who surrounded her with his Atheris will, anchoring her to her position. Her hands moved swiftly. A couple of holographic panels materialized before her, and the ship stabilized almost instantly. The alarms blaring across the chamber were silenced just as fast. "Phew!" she exhaled in relief, but then her expression narrowed dangerously. Her fingers tapped quickly on a few more holograms, and a gigantic holographic projection appeared overhead, revealing a scene that made her eyes darken. A battlefield. 3 familiar figures, Isha, Rakshasa, and Antares, collide with dozens of alien warriors. "Well, it seems like the negotiations aren't working well this time?" Void asked, raising a brow. Ryuk shook his head, staring at the footage. He only needed one look to realize. Void pirates. They were humanoid aliens, ashy brown in color, and seemed like hybrids of human and scorpion. Each one possessed tails with stinger tips, along with 6 pincers for arms. They wore various space artifacts like bangles and chains across their necks, each acting like a cocoon that allowed them to easily maneuver in the void. But what shocked Ryuk most was their aura. The weakest among them was at the Eternal stage. And when Ryuk looked at their humongous spaceship, he sensed something wild slumbering within. If it could pique his attention, then it had to be Apocrypha stage or even beyond. Normally, Antares' presence alone is enough to scare off most pirates we've encountered. But they're strangely refusing any form of negotiation, Elder Selene said. Ryuk gave a thoughtful hum and made his choice. "I'll go check things out," he said. Before she could reply, "I'll come with you," Void started. But Ryuk barked back. "No. Stay here with Elder Selene." "But why? Do you?" "It's an order, Void." A vortex appeared before Ryuk. He stepped into it and vanished. "TSK. Fine. Go break a leg if you want, but I won't be there to save your ass this time," Void grumbled out loud. The portal closed before his face, and he gave a soft growl through his maw. Elder Selene ignored the grumbling cat, turning to the footage again. She immediately saw as Ryuk appeared amidst the conflict and explosions. But then, everything suddenly halted. The explosion froze mid-air. At the point where Ryuk stood, something began to spread out radially, something inky black. It turned into a dark cocoon, completely enveloping everyone within, cutting off all visuals. For the next few seconds, Elder Selene couldn't see anything. Just, "What is that?" she thought, tapping on various holograms, trying to pierce through the cocoon with radars. But every attempt failed. She didn't have to worry long, though. 10 seconds later, the dark cocoon faded off, and the scene before her, it numbed her to the bones. The instant Ryuk stepped out, he was immediately faced with explosions blasting all around him. Axe images, claw images, and frost beams could be seen slashing through the horde of void pirates, sending some of them flying into the air. But quickly enough, they were back on their feet, charging again with savage fury. The attacks were strong enough to launch most into the far void, but no matter how many times they were hit, their endurance was monstrous. They regrouped, and with every second, came at Isha, Rak, and Antares even more ferociously. But what Ryuk found truly unforgivable was the murderous intent flooding the void. It didn't come from Isha, Rakshasa, or Isha, who seemed to be more or less gaining entertainment by fighting them, but the same couldn't be said for the pirates. They weren't just fighting, they were trying to kill them, and that he didn't find entertaining. If their presence alone isn't enough to make you all back off, Ryuk muttered. The void pirates began to notice him, heads slowly turning upward toward the new arrival. But he was already in motion, his hands drifting toward each other, palms gradually drawing in with fingers curling around. Then this surely will. Domain expansion. The instant those words left his lips, all explosions halted. Every beating heart in the void thumped once louder. A terrifying stillness blanketed everything, thicker than silence. Even Isha, Rak, and Antares felt it. They were caught inside the domain before they could blink. Then the final words fell. Throne of the Dying Star. A nebulosized rift tore open the sky above. Its edges weren't smooth. They fractured outward like shattered glass, bleeding starlight in reverse, sucking all color inward. From within, something began to emerge. Not light, not fire, but a realm of ruin. Jagged stone structures, torn void terrain, and above it all, a dying star, pitch-black star suspended by massive chains of darkness, pulsing with a frequency that echoed into the hearts of everyone trapped below. Beneath it sat a half-broken throne, and seated within, Ryuk. Above his head, a broken crown floated, encrusted with black crystals that glinted with the same pitch-black star that was behind him. He rose slowly from his seat, and with his arms reaching downward toward them all, he spoke. May all movement cease to exist. It was an absolute decree seemingly from a god, one that cannot be evaded or resisted. It was like an invisible chain wrapped around their bodies. Their auras flared violently as they struggled, but it was useless. No matter how powerful they were, none of them could move, not even an inch. Host has rewritten a law of reality. All movement, save for hosts, has been ceased. Duration before reality resets itself, 28 seconds. The notification appeared before him, but Ryuk paid it no mind. He made his next move. A single step forward, and his body pierced outward, faster than a bullet. Midway, the order rang in his mind. Activate null transformation. True skill. Tyrant form. Null of destruction. Has been activated. Fear lock aura activated. Anti-regeneration clause activated. His body instantly expanded, shifting from his 2.5-meter height to 7 meters tall, and from a handsome humanoid form to a devilish being covered in crimson scales that glistened with an aura of death and destruction. He emerged before the void pirates, right eye gleaming with murderous bloodlust. His hands transformed into a massive, devilish talon, coated in those same red scales, the edge glinting sharper than the sharpest of blades. Then, the void in his path was slashed into nothingness. He targeted the head of the nearest pirate. The pirate tried, but couldn't move, couldn't resist, and couldn't run. He looked into Ryuk's eyes, and felt only fear. A fear so deep, it crumbled his very existence. It cancelled all its thoughts, leaving nothing in his mind and then under. Ash-brown blood burst into the sky. The head was gone, cleaved clean through like paper. But Ryuk didn't stop. His claws carried forward, and 4 more heads were ripped off in the next motion, blood splashing like fountains into the air. Appearing 2 meters away from the next group of pirates, his claw dropped downward, blasting into his chest as it ripped upward while Ryuk's arm tore through 3 pirates. And in the end, 3 beating hearts soon burst into nothing but blood as his claw folded and ripped them apart. The rest of the pirates watched in terror. But their screams of horror couldn't be carried far, and they could only watch as the senseless massacre unfolded before their eyes. Ryuk's claws tore through them, merciless, terrifyingly fast, and relentless, giving none of them a chance of even regretting their actions. One by one, the Void Pirates collapsed to their knees, some headless, others with gaping holes in their chests. Took a long time to describe, but in reality only 7 seconds had passed, and then, the only sound that remained was the heartbeats. The loud, thudding heartbeat of Ryuk, standing in the middle of a graveyard of bodies. The remaining alive, just the trio, could only stand paralyzed, staring at the demon in horror. Headless corpses floated around him. Some had entire hearts ripped from their chests, their ribs shattered inward like paper. Blood floated freely in the void, raining down like crimson snow. And through it all, Ryuk remained unmoved. The trio, Rakshasa, Isha, and Antares, stood frozen, speechless. Even though Rakshasa had seen this form before, she'd never witnessed it unleashed in battle before, and somehow, it felt even more terrifying than before. The 7-meter-tall devil stood there, his blood-soaked claws outstretched, as if none of the deaths around him had anything to do with him. Then Ryuk turned to them, and when Isha looked into his eyes, her heart skipped. Those weren't Ryuk's eyes. They were cold, unfamiliar, and most terrifying of all, lifeless. There was no sign of soul in them, only an endless ripple of crimson destruction aura, and an insane bloodlust. Deactivate domain. The words echoed, and instantly, the rift in the sky collapsed. A shockwave of cosmic force pulled the realm backward, dragging the dying star and its throne into nothing. The sky of the void returned, but the horror remained. Inside the spacecraft, Elder Selene stood frozen, her eyes locked onto the footage that showed a blood-drenched battlefield. A wave of nausea surged through her, but what left her truly trembling was when she saw him. Is that Ryuk? Ryuk. Isha called out to Ryuk, who slowly turned his head. Frost suddenly covered his hands, along with the blood on his claws, and then, it shattered into pieces as it fell, revealing Ryuk's claw, now drained of all blood. Isha, he called out, but his words were like nails scraping against each other, and the smile he tried to create only made her take a step back in fear. You don't have time for this, you know that, right? The system notification suddenly flashed. Ryuk faintly turned his head to look at the gigantic pirate ship still floating behind him, before he turned back to Antares. Antares, Rakshasa. He suddenly called out to both of them as they looked into his eyes. Thank you, he said. A faint grin appeared on Antares's lips, and he shrugged his shoulders. Just getting myself some exercise is all, he said. Ryuk nodded, but then he continued, I have a task for you. Return to the spaceship and tell Elder Selene to keep on the journey. Anything you meet on your path until I join you. Antares's eyebrows knitted. Kill them. Kill all of them. It caught the barbarian's attention even more, as he could sense the emotion behind Ryuk's words _caution. But a little skirmish with void pirates, which he had massacred so easily, shouldn't have made him cautious at all. And that was what caused Antares to look behind Ryuk, at the gigantic spaceship. For some reason, he could feel it. There was something with that spaceship. Something was amiss. But he had watched Ryuk a couple of times now, and he knew he never makes a decision without a reason. If he wanted them gone without him, it was most likely for the best. Here, he said, flinging him an object, which Ryuk caught in his palms. It was a communication device. Elder Selene will send the update of our aircraft's location to you soon, he said. Ryuk nodded, and his hands instantly reached out, conjuring a void vortex beside them. He nodded reassuringly to Rakshasa, whose eyes flamed with light, but she did not comment. Wait, Ryuk, why are you staying Beihai? Isha tried to ask, but Rakshasa gripped her hands, and instantly, she was dragged into the void vortex. Not even 3 seconds later, the spacecraft rippled forward with speed, sending a cosmic shockwave that blasted apart the air around. And soon, it became a disappearing beam of light that shot quickly into the distance. Hoo! An exhale of blood-red gas escaped Ryuk's lungs as he watched the spaceship completely disappear, and only then did he slowly turn back to the gargantuan ship. Then, the sound of clapping suddenly resounded from within the spaceship. Then it began to pull apart, the middle part opening up. The entire spaceship had been split, so smoothly that it could have only been done by an incredibly sharp blade with horrific slicing power. When the spaceship pulled apart, it finally revealed the entity. A young man. He looked just about 20 or 22. Billowing short blue hair. White complexion. Big eyes, each of them holding two pitch-black irises instead of one. A pair of ruby-red lips, which were currently parted into a smile. He was clad in royal masculine attire, a navy blue coat tailored over his lean form, with huge collars and a row of ornamental buttons running down the front. Over the coat, he wore a navy blue cloak, hanging over his right shoulder. His trousers were made of the same dark velvet material, tucked into eye-catching, tall black boots that reached up to his knees. Ryuk learned just one thing from his appearance. Even though he came out of the spaceship of the destroyed Void Pirates, he was nothing like them in physiology, which meant the young man in front of him probably hijacked the spaceship and killed whoever was the previous pirate leader. But still, there was something about him, something that prompted him to silently activate a skill. Host has activated a draconic skill, Skyvane Lattice. The moment he activated the skill, the void, exactly 300 meters around Ryuk, instantly changed. Everything alive began to shimmer, as threads of pure void energy traveled across the space, weaving through bodies and air. The dead, floating pirates, slowly crushed into nothing by the pressure of the void, glowed with a gray energy radiating a clear aura of death. But then, Ryuk could faintly feel something embedded on their bodies, around their head and heart parts. Something glowing with an especially eye-catching ash-blue aura. He could feel it was unnatural, and when he looked at the young man before him, he appeared as a thread completely covered in that same ash-blue aura. Unlike the one on the dead pirates, his was thrumming with a bizarre dark power one Ryuk could never mistake. It was the faint aura of nulls. It was mixed in with the young man's ashy blue life aura, making Ryuk affirm his suspicion. It's just like I guessed. He truly had something to do with the nulls. You? The young man said, as he floated forward among the parted ship wreckage, pointing a finger at Ryuk. Somehow, his fingers were so lean and long, they looked like feminine claws, pale white, pointed right at Ryuk. You must be him, the son of Thaith Vorgoth. Please, correct me if I'm wrong, he said in a courtly, gentle tone, prompting a reply. You already sound very sure, Ryuk said blankly, his voice still thick like a roar. Oh, please, I just felt like you must be his son. After all, you seem to have the same sickness as him. Sickness, Ryuk thought. Except yours seems much worse, of course. The man added, his tone still laced with mystery. Who are you? Ryuk asked, ignoring the topic. Oh, where are my manners? Please forgive me. The young man bowed lightly. I am Evander, a threadbearer of the Marionette Queen, he said, but all he got was a blank look from Ryuk, which made him smile deeper as he continued. I do believe you may know her by her other name, the Sixth Null Calamity. The Sixth Null Calamity? Ryuk muttered in surprise, caught off guard by Evander's words. He did not think the Sixth Null Calamity would already be on his tail at all, and that only made him even more confused. Why was this man before him? Could he have been sent by the Sixth Null Calamity to kill him? Seems like you know who she is now, son of Thaith Vorgoth, Evander said, but it only made Ryuk even quieter. The Sixth Null Calamity is a she? Let me guess. She sent you to come and kill me and harvest my body parts. Huh? Ryuk asked with a mocking grin, his hands folding together as he looked at the young man, who only chuckled at his words, shaking his head in disagreement as he did so. Oh, please, I assure you, unlike the rest of the nulls, My queen is more civil and above such things as brutish and barbaric fighting, he said with a smile. And without wasting any more words, he reached out with his slender fingers, as the space above his hands glowed with an ash-blue light. Soon enough, an object appeared. An ash-blue colored envelope, seemingly as thick as card, and covered in various dark inscriptions. This is an invitation letter from the Marionette Queen to the son of Theithvorgith, for the celebration of her 9th year of being crowned as a major queen of the Throne of Threads. He said this as the ash-blue letter slowly floated toward Ryuk, pausing when it reached a meter before him. Ryuk's vision paused on the letter, filled with confusion. All he had was a simple question. Why would the Marionette Queen invite him to her? She hoped this would ease you in the search for her, and she makes a promise to take good care of you on your arrival, he said with the same polite smile, a stark contrast to the words that came from those lips. Ryuk's hands still reached for the letter, as the system panel flashed before him, having done a quick scan. He opened it up to see a map imprinted on its surface, along with a special ash-blue colored invitation card. If she wants to speed up her death, then fine. I'll be her guest, Ryuk said, keeping the letter in his shop. Very well then. I am but a messenger, and now I have successfully carried my message to you. If you have no questions for me, then I hope to be able to take my leave, Evander said. His unsettling smile remained on his lips, and a series of questions flashed in Ryuk's mind. Should he attack him? Kill him? It was a surprisingly difficult choice to make when the young man never once showed the slightest aggression toward him. It somehow hit Ryuk with an unexplainable paralysis of action. He asked me to ask a question? What should I even ask him? He thought to himself. But in the end, he decided. Will you attend the ceremony of the card you just gave to me? He asked, a bizarre question, as he watched Evander's smile falter for a second. But he replied nonetheless. Rest assured, if you're to make an appearance, then I will be on the left side of my queen, he said, continuing a moment later. If that is all, then I will now take my leave, Evander said, giving a courteous bow before he turned his back and then slowly began to disappear into the distance. For a second, after he turned his back, Ryuk raised his right hand, stretching his claw towards him. But then, it simply hung in the air, silently, until Evander completely disappeared, and he eventually dropped his hand back to his side. You let him go? The system asked in disbelief, unable to comprehend his action. Deactivate all active skills, he ordered as his transformation reverted, and the sight around him returned to the pitch-black void. Once more, the envelope holding the invitation card reappeared in his hands, and he brought out the paper, looking closely at the map. It's the exact location of the direction of the Evil Conqueror's race location, right from the direction of the planetary port, the system analyzed. So, she really sent me her precise location. But why? For the 6th calamity to reach you this fast, she must already be aware of the death of Zarkul. And if they were aware of the death of Zarkul, then she must be aware of your recent rise, shown by taking back your body parts. The system analyzed, resulting in Ryuk's brows furrowing. Yet she sent you an invitation card to her palace. It's safe to say, she most likely didn't take you as a serious opponent capable of bringing her demise. She's treating this like a game, and sending you an invitation card? It's her setting the venue of the game, and most likely the rules too, since you now have no choice but to head to her location. A game, huh? Ryuk mused under his breath, chuckling a bit to himself. I wonder why my opponents never take me seriously, he muttered silently with a grin. He could still remember, all of the powerful opponents he had faced never once took him seriously. High Scholar Emrys had sent his clone to him, thinking it was enough to keep him at bay. And even when Ryuk met him, he was busy cooking up chemicals in his labs, showing an utter lack of seriousness. When he faced Zarkul, the old bones still thought he was the same little kid from the dreams, still referring to him as the Little Dark One. And a recent example was when he had faced that Seraphim initiate Radiant Blythe, who thought of him as just an object of interest, until he showed her he could rip her life apart with ease. None of his opponents ever took him seriously. Yes, they all don't, the system replied. Until right at the moment when they see their life flashing before their eyes. A pity they never even get the chance to regret before their lives are ripped away. Seems like the Marionette Queen will be no exception. I'll go for it, Ryuk decided, the invitation card in his hands fading into the void, safely stored away in the shop space. I'll attend her ceremony, but for now, I must get to the planetary port first, he said, as the holographic device Antares had given him returned to his hands. On it, he could see the beeping notification at the side, which he tapped on, watching the direction where the ship had traveled. Just a moment later, his hands reached outward, swiping to the side. A void vortex was instantly opened up, and he stepped into it, fading into thin air. The void returned to its eternal silence once more. The sound of sniffing could be heard through the center control room, coming from a dark void panther, whose red nose wriggled. Void sniffed and sniffed, his actions picked up by those around, and then his nose hit directly behind him. Ow! He winced in pain when he felt the sting in his nose, but his irritated expression quickly faded when he saw who stood before him. Ryuk! The voices all rang out in unison as he got to a knee, rubbing the panther beneath its jaw, leading to a soft purring sound. You're back? A voice rang out from the side, as a faint cold aura surrounded the air around him. He raised his head to the sight of her teary yet weary eyes. But not for long did she stay in doubt, as he rose to her feet, swooping her into his embrace. I am Isha, he comforted, brushing her snow-white hair gently. You stayed back, and you were overly cautious. Why? The voice rang out a while later, coming from none other than Rakshasa. When he turned to look at them, he could see everyone in the room was just as curious. The pirate ship, he began as they listened. A powerful entity has hijacked it. The alien pirates we fought are all under his command, he said, drawing furrowed eyebrows, but then Antares asked, a powerful entity, you say? Is it something you felt we couldn't handle? Antares asked, drawing Ryuk's knitted eyebrows. What do you mean? He asked, as the barbarian opened his lips to respond, but the voice came faster. You said he was a powerful entity, and you seemed cautious of him. Was he powerful enough for you to think we couldn't have dealt with him together? Or do you think we would only be a drag if we faced him with you? Rakshasa was the one who asked this, and Ryuk faintly understood their point. Rakshasa was at the Apocrypha stage, the same as Antares, and yet he had asked them to leave. They seemed to wonder why he would make such a request, and how powerful the being he had faced was, for him to require them to leave. But then, a second thought occurred to him when he tried to reason with Rakshasa's final words. Or do you think we will only be a drag if we face him with you? I do not think any of you are a drag, he said, highlighting the point. Then why did you ask us to leave when you felt the danger? Why didn't you feel it wiser for us to stay and fight whatever it was together? She asked. After all, it makes sense to me that two Apocrypha sage beings in any situation would be an added advantage, no? She finished, watching Ryuk, whose brows were faintly knitted. Her points made sense. They were both at the Apocrypha stage, yet he had asked them to leave. If he had to face a powerful enemy, then having them on his side ought to have been an advantage. It made no logical sense for him to have asked for them to leave. I never thought of them staying as a choice at all when that happened. I just wanted them to get as far away from the danger as they could, but that was a dumb choice. Having them stay would have made things better. That was a mistake made from my fear of the unknown. I should have asked you to stay truly. I'm sorry, he admitted, something that made light crisscross in his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. She took a step forward, and an instant later, she was right before him. I do not know of the future, Ryuk, Rakshasa began, her eyes looking into his, iridescent pink and crimson blue faintly crisscrossing. But you can rest assured that for now, You need not feel like you have to fight alone or carry the burden of everyone's safety. She faintly whispered, yet it hit hard enough to leave a loud thump in his chest. "I," he said, pausing, as his gaze faintly scanned the room, seeing Antares, who gave a nod, same for Elder Selene. "I understand," he said. "Good. Now, I have to say, you woke up just at the right time," Elder Selene said, as the color in the room shifted from its previous brightness to a dim light. They all gathered around the pillar where various footage flashed around, and Elder Selene sent one flying towards Ryuk, who caught it before tapping on it and magnifying it. The footage shown was what lay before them all, the outside void, but now he could see they seemed to have arrived in an entirely different space. For one, the void, an area of endless dark, with occasionally glittering fragments of colossal bodies, had now been replaced. The darkness was withdrawn, and its source came from none other than stones the size of skyscrapers, shapeless and hanging all around for as far as Ryuk could see. But what was breathtaking about them was the faint black halo that faintly warped around each of these rocks. The bigger the rocks, the bigger the black hole, and from just sighting alone, Ryuk could faintly feel that the laws of reality around these stones faintly bent, seemingly having undergone some changes. We have to pass through this," he muttered unconsciously, looking at the tightly packed stones and continuously altering reality. Elder Selene replied, "This is the first crosshold. The first danger, an environmentally induced danger zone." The thought echoed in Ryuk's head as he looked at the floating celestial stones and the bending reality around them. Cleaving through with a strike won't work. The explosion of so many black holes and the unstable reality rules can cause the most devastating damage I've ever seen. The plan is still the same, then. I'll wrap the spacecraft in void vortex, absorbing any twisting reality effects away from the ship. But honestly, this looks much worse than it was described. We can still turn back. There's another route, 90 degrees east from this path. It'll take a week, but we'll get safely to our destination," Elder Selene said from the side. But Ryuk shook his head. "It's fine. The plan remains the same," he said, and an object appeared in his hands. "I'll send a signal for you to move once I'm done wrapping the ship with void aura. Then, you just focus on passing through the open path between these rocks," he said to Elder Selene, who nodded. "Should I join you?" Antares asked from the side, and Ryuk nodded. "Yes. I'll need your help in case of any mishap since I'll be pretty much helpless once I open the void vortex." He stood upright. "Void, you're coming too," Ryuk said, looking at the Void Panther, who scoffed. "What? You need me to save your ass now?" "Yeah. Count me out, you goof," Void said with a huff, but then his eyes widened in shock. He tried to puff into smoke, but failed, as Ryuk's hand grabbed him by the back of its neck, heaving its legs up the ground with a lift. "Hey you! Let me down!" Void shouted. But a void vortex materialized right before Ryuk, who flung the lecherous cat through it. "You bitchless bastard!" Void's scream rang out clearly through the room. Ryuk's eyebrows quivered. He tried to hold it in and act unfazed by the accusation, but when he saw the various eyebrows raised at him by the group and Isha giggling in mockery, he failed, rushing into the vortex after Void. "Joke's on you, you lecherous bastard. I've gotta—" The others in the room could only eye each other weirdly. Antares found himself grinning uncontrollably as he also disappeared into the portal, which closed up after him. Now, there were just the 3 women left inside. "Okay, so we're supposed to pass through this death trap, protected by 2 bastards that could get into a fight at any time. Yeah, nothing can go wrong," Rakshasa said, uneasy even at her own words. Elder Selene, meanwhile, began tapping a new set of holographics. "His help will be appreciated," she thought, "but I've prepared some defense in case things go wrong." She issued a new command to the ship, which immediately began remodeling itself, in the space between the exterior and interior, unnoticed by the group. "Okay, plays over, Void. We focus on the plan now," Ryuk called out, ceasing their 3-minute banter. "Tisich goof," Void spat as he turned his head with a huff, unknowingly facing the ship's front direction, and the sight ahead made his spine chill. "So, Ryuk?" he asked, turning to look at Ryuk, who was on one knee with both hands placed on the ship's hull. "Yes," Ryuk forced out a reply. "Can we go over the plan again?" "Yes," Ryuk replied half-heartedly while trying to draw the map of whatever they would be facing ahead in his mind. "So, we'll be coasting through harmless-looking stones. That will mark the end of our lives if we make the slightest collision with one?" he asked. Ryuk nodded. "Yes. And I'm supposed to do what again?" "You, Void, just need to stand where you are. In case a void portal I open erases in any part of the ship. You'll have to run over to the location and patch it back up with a temporary vortex. And I'll also be sharing your void energy." Void furrowed his brows, clearly confused, or just scared to death. Who could blame him, though? Void was still only a grade A beast calamity stage. The fact that he could even stand in the open void without getting crushed was due to his void attributes and control. No one beneath the eternity stage should even be standing here, let alone doing this, so his fear made sense. But was it that Ryuk truly needed Void's help? Actually, no. He knew he'd be just fine without Void. He didn't need Void's mana since he already had enough Void mana within himself. And asking Void to patch up any suddenly open vortex? He also didn't plan for any to suddenly open. He brought Void along for another reason, to make him face fear. Fear of death hanging around him. Fear that he, Ryuk, might not be able to save him. Void would have to, for the first time, rely on someone who wasn't himself. That should make for good training. Can you go over the plan one more time? Just once more," Void begged. And Terry's called from the side. "Don't fret about it, Void. You'll be safe. As long as you're not suddenly sucked into one of those black holes and crushed into a thread in a second. I should be able to save you in 2 seconds. You just need to resist for one." Void's expression crumpled. "Wait, is that supposed to comfort me somehow, big guy?" And Terry's looked at him. "Aren't you comforted?" Void slapped a paw over his face. "Why did I get myself into this mess?" "Okay, we begin," Ryuk called out the moment his senses fully enveloped the entire spaceship. "Activate King's aura," he ordered in his mind. Shimmer. His eyes opened to reveal compelling runic blue patterns, a wild beastly aura surging out from him. But it wasn't just him. Immediately, a blue runic tattoo appeared on Void's forehead, and Terry's watched its aura start to rise by a couple of stages. Interesting, he thought, watching the glowing duo. But more was coming. From beneath Ryuk's palm, something began surging. "Activate Void Vortex." Void Vortex has been activated. Immediately, a 10-meter diameter void vortex appeared. Ryuk maintained his stance, his will spreading outward, while Antares watched the swirling dark mass morph from a portal shape into something more fluid. Liquid darkness rapidly spreading over the entire ship. It wrapped around Antares' leg, though he couldn't physically feel its existence. Yet, he could sense the horrifying pull, an unseen force trying to drag him somewhere else. But with sheer power, he endured, remaining firmly on his feet. "How you holding up, Void?" Ryuk's voice rang out. He stayed in place, head raised, glancing toward Void, who stood among the swirling chaos. The vortex consumed it up to the ankles, yet it remained rooted, unmoved, thanks to its control over Void energy. "It's fine. And, did you just turn the Void vortex into a liquid state? How did you even pull that off?" the Panther asked, impressed, staring at the fluid vortex. Ryuk smirked. "It should be 100 times simpler for you, if you'd stop lecherously snuggling in bosoms all day," he teased, earning a theatrical eye roll from the cat. Void stretched out a paw, a small vortex condensing at the tip. Ryuk watched as the vortex twisted and flickered like dancing black flames for a few seconds. Then, its circular shape shattered, scattering into darkness that slithered along its paw like a living glove. It flowed across Void's form, and Ryuk's jaw slackened when he realized it wasn't just Void's aura. It was the vortex itself, compressed into a liquid form and reshaped entirely. Void had mimicked his ability, shifted the void vortex into a fluid, and given it new form. So, what were you saying again? The panther asked with a cocky tilt of the head. On a second thought, I take it back, Ryuk admitted with a sigh, prompting a satisfied huff from the feline. That's better. You can hold this for long, right? Antares asked as he arrived beside Ryuk, who nodded. Yeah, I should be able to. Okay, I'll send the message for them to continue moving, he said. A device appeared in his hand, and he quickly sent the command. A couple of seconds later, the ship's engines hummed beneath their feet as movement resumed. Slowly and cautiously, they entered a chaotic spread of hanging celestial bodies, maneuvering carefully through the cracks between warped realities. They were truly inside now. The horror began. Ryuk could feel it, countless forces pulling at him from all directions. Sometimes it felt like his body weighed an extra 10,000 kilos. Other times he felt lighter than air, almost floating off the back of the ship. Antares was steady as stone, though he occasionally stumbled, unable to fully suppress the effects. Even so, he was clearly resisting well. Every so often, his hand would shoot out to pull Ryuk's legs back to the ground, keeping him grounded. But when Ryuk turned to look at Void, he was momentarily speechless. The Void Cat had completely enveloped itself in its void vortex, leaving only its maw exposed, likely just to flash him that mocking grin. Keep at it, keep at it. You're doing well, Ryuk, Void said, his tone a mix of amusement and mockery as he glanced sideways at Ryuk, who gritted his teeth before turning to Antares. Ask them to speed up, he said. Immediately, Antares sent another message, and the trio soon felt the ship's speed increase. The ship, fully encased in a liquefied void vortex, tore through the space between black holes and the collapsing boundaries of reality. As they moved faster, Ryuk realized that speeding up was the best option. It allowed them to pass through the fluctuating gravitational effects quickly, minimizing prolonged exposure. But that also meant facing multiple distorted reality rules at once, resulting in a sharp increase in strain as he struggled to hold the void vortex together. Seconds turned to minutes, minutes turned to hours, and hours began to feel like days as the ship continued its journey. A few new figures appeared aboard the ship, standing near Ryuk, Antares, and Void. They were shimmering robotic beings, seemingly coated in a layer of techno-energy, their designs far beyond this world. They were the defense technoguards, 3 of them, summoned by Ryuk to help shield the trio from the worst of the effects. They were doing a solid job. A dome of techno-energy quickly formed around the trio. Void eventually had to assist, too, as the fractured rules of reality kept tearing parts of his vortex. He had to constantly patch them back together, just as Ryuk had warned might happen. When Ryuk looked at the cat, a satisfied smile crept across his face. That arrogant grin Void had been wearing earlier was now long gone, replaced with a sharp, focused expression. Even the mighty Void Panther, a prodigy at manipulating void, was clearly struggling due to the energy being consumed. And when exactly are we going to get out of this place? Or is this how it's going to be forever? Void eventually snapped at Antares, who was checking the device. The big guy shot him a, "What's that got to do with me?" Look. What? Tired already? Ryuk teased, glancing at the cat, who snorted. In your dreams, goof. I've just got important things to do with my time. Heck, how long has this been going on? A year? Void exclaimed, turning to Antares, who checked the device before replying. Just 79 hours, 43 minutes, and 52 seconds, he said calmly. Void nodded but then asked, and how long will it continue? 27,550 hours, 59 minutes, and 8 seconds. Antares replied with a bright smile. Void's exhausted expression immediately collapsed into one of pure despair. But it wasn't only him. Even Ryuk's head shot up in alarm. For real? he asked, earning loud laughter from Antares. Look at your faces. Hehehe. No. You only need to hold on for 25 more hours, and we should be out. That's what Elder Selene wrote. By the way, he added, causing both Ryuk and Void to exhale in relief. At least the gruesome experience of holding a skill active for as long as 3 days was almost over. Silence continued, the only sensation being the ripples of energy surging throughout the entire void as the spacecraft raced forward at incredible speed. But soon enough, Ryuk began to notice it. The density of the rocks was starting to reduce greatly. In time, there was nothing but scattered stones around, no bending gravity, no distortions. After holding out for 5 more hours, they finally exited the chaotic zone. Phew, finally out, Void said, exhaling in relief as its paw collapsed to its side. But Ryuk's eyes flickered when he noticed something ahead. There seemed to be a sort of darkened barrier, perfectly blended with the surrounding void. It blended so perfectly that even with his sharp senses, he could barely see it. Is that? He began. But then, shock overtook his face as the void vortex instantly flared across the surface of the ship. A moment later, it recoiled and collapsed around the figures of Ryuk, Antares, and the technoguards, pulling them all off the spacecraft in a blur of movement. An instant later, they reappeared inside the ship. Boom! What is? Brace for impact! Elder Selene's shocked and panicked voice rang throughout the entire ship. A second later, it felt like slamming into a body of water, as a blinding ray of void light faintly enveloped everyone in the room. A soft foam-like material burst out from the walls, and within a second, the interior shifted into a padded environment. They were all sent flying chaotically across the ship, bodies spinning uncontrollably before it all finally came to a stop after a few moments. It stopped. Is everybody okay? Elder Selene called out as she regained her footing, having been lucky enough to be sitting on a couch that had suddenly inflated from the wall. A figure soon came crashing down from the ceiling, slamming into the floor with a helpless thud. It was none other than Void. The panther's entire body splayed awkwardly across the ground like a splattered watermelon. Its eyeballs could be seen spiraling within their sockets as it rose shakily on its 4 legs, spinning around like a drunken cat. Antares jumped off the wall, landing softly with Isha held safely in his arms. He gently lowered her to the ground. But then, everyone turned to the side, towards a rather awkward sight. There was one more person in the room, imprinted directly into the wall couch. Except, the person had 2 additional arms protruding from the sides, along with 2 extra legs, making the figure resemble a strange 2-legged, 4-limbed creature. They could all see Rakshasa. But then, they heard a muffled groan. Get off me! A voice forced out. Rakshasa's rolling eyeballs finally stopped. Huh? She looked around, only now noticing the strange gazes aimed her way. She quickly realized something was wrong. Where's Ryuk? She asked, and followed everyone's frozen gaze, staring beneath her. There, embedded under her, were the imprints of 2 additional legs and 2 hands right above her own. A chill ran down her spine, and she jerked off the wall, hiding behind Isha. TCH. A displeased click of the tongue was the first sound they heard as Ryuk groaned at the edge of the couch. After trying 3 times, his hand finally gripped the edge, and he pulled himself out. H! The loud sound of heavy exhaling filled the room as Ryuk caught his breath, then rolled off the wall, landing on both feet. Oh. Someone got crushed into the wall. Ha ha ha. The boisterous laughter came from none other than Void, who immediately earned Ryuk's unforgiving glare. The next instant, Void vanished off the ship, sent back into the pet space. Sorry, Rakshasa said between suppressed laughter and awkward apology, glancing at Ryuk, whose face was now red as a tomato. He opened his lips to say something but paused, eyes caught on the strange floating holograph directly in front of him. Everyone followed his gaze and was met with a flickering holographic projection showing a bizarre image. Elder Selene immediately moved back to the center of the room, tapping a control holograph to deactivate the soft wall padding before attention turned back to the footage. which should have shown the outside of the void. But it was like they had completely entered an entirely new universe. There were hundreds of gigantic spaceships, some with sleek designs like their own, others as massive as miniature stars. Some were in such alien shapes that they defied any known classification. The muffled silence was gone. Now, the air was filled with loud honking noises and shouts from other beings across the station. Ryuk's gaze quickly swept the area, noticing some ships descending into the atmosphere of nearby planets scattered across this part of the void. But he still couldn't help but ask, "Just where are we?" "The refilling dimensional port," Elder Selene answered as all attention turned to her. She calmly tapped a couple of holographic symbols, and soon a gigantic map appeared in the air. All our travels until now were within the normal void. But along the path, we were destined to cross the first Eid. But we only needed to pass the Eid because our actual goal was to break through the interdimensional void barrier. A void barrier? Was it that thing we slammed into just now? Antares asked, and she nodded. Yes, that was the reason for the turbulence. I could have given a warning, but I didn't expect it to appear right after the Eid zone. I thought we'd travel for a few more hours before reaching it. "I'm sorry," she said softly, but Rakshasa shrugged it off. "It's fine. At least everyone's okay. Could have been much worse," she consoled, and everyone quietly agreed in their hearts. Truly, no one had been hurt, and even Ryuk had only been squished into a wall. It very well could have been worse. Behind the dimensional barrier lies our first stop on this journey, the refilling dimensional point. She continued with renewed vigor. It's a location where all space routes from every direction converge. As the name suggests, refill. Whether it's stocking up on resources, buying food, refueling power sources, or repairing damaged ships, this is the quick-stop hub for all traveling races, she explained. Only now did everything make sense to them as they looked again at the thousands of floating ships. We'll also need to stock up on our supplies and power sources. The ship also suffered a bit of damage from the crash into the dimensional barrier. It's minor, but better to fix it, she announced as she began steering the ship toward one of the planets nearby. Welcome to Refilling Port Station 4. The welcoming words were carried by unknown waves, allowing them to penetrate directly through the spacecraft, resounding in the ears of everyone aboard. Please open your SpaceWave signal port to enable instructions on a safe and proper landing. Our servicing agent will be with you soon, and your needs will be promptly attended to. Thank you for your trust in Refilling Port Station. We hope you have a quick and safe journey ahead. Open up SpaceWave signal port? Rakshasa mused out confusedly. Don't worry about that. I'll handle it, Elder Selene said, her fingers rapidly tapping against a couple of new holographs before her. Occasional beeping sounds echoed, and soon enough, they all could feel the spacecraft descending. After a few seconds, it came to a total stop. We've landed, Elder Selene announced, turning to the others, who all nodded. She turned to Ryuk, who asked, You need to pack up some resources, right? Then go do just that. Antares will follow you, in case of a mishap. Good plan, she agreed. And I'm guessing Rakshasa is dying to stretch those legs too, and maybe charm some unfortunate souls with those eyes, he added, earning an eye roll from Rakshasa. I'm not charming anyone, she muttered, though she wasn't against the idea of getting off the ship. Staying within these walls for over 2 weeks was tiring. She definitely needed to stretch and take a breath of fresh air, or alien air in this case. I'll go with Rakshasa, Isha said, waving from the side. Ryuk nodded with a smile. Okay, he agreed. If anything goes wrong, send the signal telepathically to Void, and he'll relay it to me, he said to her mentally. Why Void? Why not directly to you? She asked telepathically. I might be in slumber, and not hear you, but Void is close by and will wake me up, he explained telepathically before speaking aloud. Void and I will remain on the spacecraft, just in case, he added, exhaling in relief when the group didn't object and didn't ask any questions. Their reason was simple. They were all disembarking on a world they'd never visited. even if just temporarily. Having someone stay behind felt necessary, and with Ryuk volunteering, it was a relief. "Seems like all has been planned," Elder Selene said, tapping on a holograph as the faint sound of rumbling came from the ship. Ryuk felt rays of sunlight filtering through as the hatch opened. The group moved out while he remained behind. The hatch soon closed, leaving him alone, until 5 seconds later, when a black figure popped out of thin air, landing on all fours. You damn goof," Void cursed at Ryuk, who turned his back and disappeared into his allocated room. "Hey, where is everybody?" Void wondered, looking around the empty space as it tiptoed after Ryuk and entered the training room. "Don't tell me you're going to sleep again?" it asked, watching Ryuk remove his clothing and settle down in the mana pool. "Everyone has left, and both of us are acting as ship holders." "Ship holders?" it asked with tingling whiskers. "We're staying here in case anything goes wrong. You're not allowed to leave the spacecraft unless you get my explicit permission. If anyone unfamiliar comes in, wake me up, understand?" he asked, glancing at the panther. Void opened its mouth to protest, but then saw Ryuk's sitting position and grinned wickedly to itself instead. "Of course I understand, Ryuk. I'll stay right here the whole time, not moving an inch while you're asleep. You just continue your cultivation without worry, okay?" it added sweetly. Ryuk's brow twitched faintly at the overly agreeable tone. He had expected an unending banter and protest since Void was a shameless extrovert, but the panther surprisingly agreed, and so easily too. "Good. And thanks, Void." "Oh, don't sweat it, Ryuk. Just doing my job as a fellow fella," Void said with a wave of its paw, but watching evilly as Ryuk's head gradually drooped to the side, and his breathing slowed to a barely audible rhythm. It waited a few moments but saw no reaction, prompting it to move closer to Ryuk. It waved a paw before his face, but Ryuk still didn't budge at all. It was all the confirmation Void needed. "Finally," Void muttered, quickly scooting away from Ryuk as a void vortex appeared before it. It was prepared to jump into the swirling energy but paused, glancing back suspiciously. "Why has he been sleeping so often lately?" it murmured. The Ryuk it remembered barely ever slept. The only time he did was during deep cultivation, and whenever he did, mana would always stir abnormally. Like snow falling or the void itself would wrap around him to form a cocoon. But this Ryuk was just sitting lazily and clearly not cultivating. And he had noticed Ryuk had been like this ever since reappearing 4 months after he vanished. Could he be doing something in his sleep? It muttered curiously, but soon shrugged it off. Who cares? At least this gives me a chance to explore the outside, and maybe find a few different bosoms compared to what I'm used to. Hee hee hee. Grinning lecherously, Void leapt into the vortex, leaving the cultivation room in absolute silence. Less than a minute later, he was completely outside the spacecraft, leaving only a slumbering Ryuk in the entirety of the ship. "I just came here to activate the Nomura skill and check what it means, but I ended up spending 4 days instead," Ryuk muttered internally. His original goal for returning had been to test his new skills, but instead, he had been dragged into the pirate issues and then had to guide the team through the Eid Zone. And all that had taken an extra 4 days to resolve, with him still yet to check out his skills. Now would be the perfect time, but then, he remembered correctly, his other body needed to leave with the Dominas for the Dominaire Royal Ground. How could they possibly travel if he were asleep? And strangely, Morgaine had never pinched him awake, so he figured they either found a way or never left. Whatever the case, he needed to confirm it. Hence, activate Throne Shift. The next second, Throne Shift was activated, and he could immediately feel the pull into the deep darkness. It remained for a while before he felt reality once more. But when he opened his eyes, it was all dark, pitch dark. "Where am I?" he muttered to himself, rising to his feet. "Activate Skyvane Lattice," he ordered. The world transformed into a realm of drifting golden dark particles. Yet he sensed no life at all, revealing that he was alone here. Host's approximate location is being scanned. Scan completed. Host has been discovered to be placed in a being storage ring. A being storage ring? Ryuk muttered, raising an eyebrow. He had never heard of that before. A storage ring is a small void space usually used to hold objects, but with a great limiting factor. It cannot hold anything with life. A being storage ring, on the other hand, is the exact opposite, possessing the capabilities to store a living being within. Host is inside a being storage ring, the system explained, and the realization finally dawned on him. So I got stored away. That's a nice option, compared to being whisked around, he muttered. Then, hands reached out and immediately, a vortex of swirling dark energy spiraled out of thin air, and Ryuk stepped into it, disappearing out of the ring. When he stepped out just a moment later, he found himself in a golden hall. I understand, Elder Nagarasuk. The voice was the first thing Ryuk heard when he stepped out, and it felt familiar. Turning to the side, he found her on a knight's bow. Morgaine. She seemed to sense him just a second later, her eyes dilating in shock at his appearance. Ryuk? She said in disbelief. It was clear she never expected him to show up at this time. But then, Ryuk's eyebrows faintly knitted together as he turned his head to the one Morgaine knelt before. It was a fallen angel, one of the pitch-black fallens, as he possessed pitch-black hair, a pitch-black cloak, and 6 pitch-black wings coiled behind him. His eyes were pitch-black too, holding irises of crimson gold. A fallen who looked somewhere around the age of 40 to 60, although Ryuk knew his true age was probably 10 times that. His eyes turned to look at Ryuk, a faint mix of confusion, and that gaze Ryuk had seen far too often, that emotion of flickering disdain. The fallen spoke first, before Ryuk could mutter a word. And who gave your peasant self permission to appear here? Or did you blindly lose your way? He asked in a condescending tone. The kind Ryuk was slowly realizing was maybe the only tone available to beings who thought themselves mightier than the heavens because they had sat on a throne for too long. But before he could reply, he did not lose his way, Elder Nagarasuk, Morgaine interjected, still on her knee. He is a familial one whom I stored in a being storage ring without informing him. I assure you, this is a mistake, she said, and Ryuk noted her tone. It was that of someone who didn't want to offend the fallen sitting on the throne. When he looked at the man on the throne, he saw a gleam of realization cross his eyes as he looked up and down at Ryuk, before his lips moved. You may leave now, Morgaine, he said. Morgaine rose to her feet, giving a slight bow before her hands reached for Ryuk's palm, trying to bring him out of the hall. But then, the voice sounded. I didn't say you can take him with you, did I? He said, resulting in Morgaine pausing in her steps. TSK. Just what I feared, she thought to herself, turning to look at the elder. But Ryuk spoke. Continue. I'll join you soon, he said. Protest was written in her eyes as she argued. But Ryuk, trust me, he said, cutting her off before she could respond. Her golden eyes faintly flashed with a crimson pentagram, and her lips bit down in frustration. Somehow, something told Morgaine that if she left Ryuk here, things wouldn't end well. I should have listened to Mom and left the being storage ring with her. Why was I so adamant? She thought with regret. She looked once more at him, but after getting his reassuring nod and that confident smile of his, the worry she felt evaporated as she returned a nod before her eyes turned to Elder Nagarasuk, who wore a plain, unreadable expression. Then I shall take my leave, she said, before she continued out of the golden hall. The sound of her fading footsteps could be heard by both Ryuk and Elder Nagarasuk, each maintaining their silence, as if they had previously agreed upon it. But the instant Morgaine's footsteps completely faded from their hearing, the elder opened his lips. So you're the boy from? His words were drowned out by the devastating sound of about 3 layers of space being severed into nothing as Ryuk tore forward with horrifying speed. An incredibly wild aura, like that of a beast's king, descended and filled every inch of the room. So fast, it was unbelievable. Elder Nagarasuk didn't waste a moment as he shot to the side with speed. But even then, he was too slow. Kaboom! Shockwaves exploded throughout the hall as a foot appeared right above the throne where Elder Nagarasuk sat. Tattoos covered every inch of its surface, the mere aura oozing from them, enough to reduce the black throne into ashes. Yet, it slammed down with horrifying force into the elder's head, nailing him into the ground amidst a 10-meter crater that spread around like a cobweb. Elder Nagarasuk's weary eyes were filled with ultimate disbelief, his brain unable to comprehend the instant change. Everything had happened so fast it was all over within a split second. Yet fury filled him when he finally processed the situation, as he raised his gaze. "You!" The scream was like the shriek of a banshee, but it halted in shock when he saw those eyes. Eyes radiating a killing intent so massive, it drowned out the rest of the words in his throat. Then Ryuk spoke a word that completely numbed the elder's mind. "I do not know who you are, nor do I care what status you may possess. What I do know for a fact is that, when next you ask my woman to give an elderly kneel in front of you yet you give her such a condescending look, will be the day I take away your useless life." His words filled with biting coldness filled the entire hall, reverberating like a bolt of electricity through the body of Elder Nogara, whose brain failed to interpret the situation he was in. Ever since he had been given birth, he had received many threats to get to this position, but none dared to ever give him a direct threat to his life, but to even step on his chest and trample on him while doing so? A loud roar boomed through the hall, followed by an explosion of energy that bloomed forth through the golden hall. A figure was instantly blown into the air, spinning a couple of times before he landed on both foot, yet the instant his feet landed on the ground, his hands automatically crossed before his chest, and then, the space in the path of his crossed arm was ripped into nothing as a dark eagle-like claw covered in bizarre dark runes appeared, and then slammed into it. The sound was the same as iron clashing into iron as a figure was roughly blown out of the hall. Morgaine had barely walked a couple of steps away from the hall, the male guards giving her a nod of acknowledgement as she walked out of the dark gate when she felt a faint release of aura. She snapped back to the dark gate, but seeing that the guards were unmoving and even wondering why she even turned back at all, she shrugged it off, continuing in her steps. "I hope they both get along with. Things might get problematic if they don't," Morgaine thought to herself as she resumed walking, but then, the sound filled with incredible rage burst out from behind as she paused in her step, her eyes turning to the door. The two guards instantly tried to go in, yet they had yet to take a step when they were erratically blown away like feathers in a storm. A figure's back burst out through the gate, appearing right before Morgaine just a second later. Her eyes dilated, finding the back more than familiar. "Ryuk!" The name echoed in her head, but her hands were already moving on their own to grab him. But she touched nothing as Void Vortex appeared right before them, and Ryuk faded into it, appearing behind Morgaine. He dragged on for about 70 more meters before finally coming to a stop. "Ryuk, are you?" Morgaine tried to say as she faded into thin air, to reach him yet halfway through to Ryuk. It descended, an aura that shook her heart so much she was unable to move even a single inch from where she stood. It was a paralyzing aura that invoked so much fear that even the ground beneath her reverberating as if an earthquake was ongoing. She strained her neck to turn it sideways, and that was when she caught sight of him. It was a fallen, billowing pitch-black hair and surrounded by pitch-dark aura. 6 gigantic wings were all unfurled behind him, coated in only black tattoos that extended to cover the entirety of his body. His aura was like one of primordial evil, or more like a divine being that fell out of heavenly grace. "Elder Nogara?" she thought in shock, looking at the drastic transformation. One of the 12 elders of the Dominaire royal family, one said to be a supreme being, with clothes having been reduced to rags. But then her eyes further flashed in disbelief and confusion when she looked at his chest area. Somehow, while the remainder of Elder Nogara's body was in black, there was a white imprint on his chest, the imprint of a foot. She thought to herself in even more confusion and disbelief, but her expression contorted when she witnessed the new aura that quickly began appearing over the sky above her. About a dozen guards had appeared in an instant, locking down the entirety of the area and bringing the suffocating aura to an unbelievable level. Her body strained under the conjoined aura as she felt strength leaving her. Morgaine was only at the Cataclysm stage, yet standing in an oppressive circle of one at the Apocrypha stage and another 12 Eternity experts. It was a miracle that she was even able to still remain conscious and not knocked down in an instant, but even she herself had her limit as her consciousness slipped and she fell to the ground. But halfway before she reached the ground, she landed first in an arm. A cold arm, yet one so soothing that she finally gave up resistance, falling asleep within them. Ryuk rose upright, eyes gazing softly at the golden-haired beauty in his arms, but then the loud voice echoed out, bringing him out of his reverie. To attempt an assassination attempt on an elder of the Dominaire family while being on the Dominaire ground. Elder Nogara shouted as he took step forwards, the ground beneath him shuddering with every step. The various guards flying above Ryuk all began descending to the ground, as if trying to arraign him, but then, "Your punishment is death, and I will be carrying it out," he declared as Ryuk raised his head up, only to find the various guards paused in their position as if stuck in time. Their gold eyes gleamed in disbelief, and some of them threw Ryuk a pity gaze. He watched them slowly back off from him, to converge in a circle around him instead, as if locking down the area, and then they stood like stone. Ryuk slowly took his gaze off to stare at Elder Nogara, who held an upright face. But Ryuk saw more than that. Host has activated Skyvane Lattice. Right now, he could more than just see what was around him. He could feel them, and all he felt flickering in the elders was a cunning, disdainful smile. "We'll finally get to be able to get rid of her headache in one swift move." The idiot signed his own death, as expected of an aboriginal boy. Exactly 270 meters away from Ryuk, there were a couple of towering buildings where several fallen experts could be seen standing in twos and threes. They all had one thing in common. They were looking at standing atop each of the buildings, gazing down at the scene of Ryuk and Elder Nogara from above. On one of these buildings stood two fallen experts. "Ah, so that is the boy. The one in a relationship with the Chosen One." The voice came from a lady fallen, her hands reclining on the railings as she looked at the scene beneath her. "He should be." The masculine voice echoed from the side, coming from a golden-haired elder. But didn't the family only ask for him to be intimidated away from her? Why are we going so far as to sentence him to death? And shouldn't this be the family's first meeting with him?" she asked with furrowed eyebrows. The male fallen elder shrugged his shoulders. "For some reason, we have been unable to find him for the past 2 weeks. But Elder Nogara discovered the being storage ring that Morgaine was wearing. We hypothesize he was being kept within the ring, although we have no idea why. The family's initial plan was simply to try and scare him away from the Chosen One. It would have been easier if he were the one who backed off from her, enabling the family to assign a proper partner from another family's chosen eventually. He seems to have eventually exited now, but looking at the foot imprint on Nogara's chest, the lady's eyes narrowed, disbelief in her gaze as she looked at Elder Nogara's chest and saw the foot imprint mark. So the threat didn't go down well, she muttered to herself, eyeing Ryuk. But then, both of their bodies froze as they watched the young man slowly turn his head toward them, and his usual poker face gradually changed into a deep frown. "Wha? Don't tell me he can hear us from that far away?" the female elder asked, her hand slipping off the railing in shock. Even the male elder had his eyebrows furrowed. But then, he was not in doubt. "He can. Well, at least Nogara will be ending him right now. Doesn't matter if he knows the secret. It's too late," the elder said coldly and uncaringly, eyeing Ryuk back without a flinch. "So, that's what is happening, huh?" Ryuk muttered to himself. Having activated Skyvane Lattice, he could clearly hear all conversations happening around 300 meters from him, and he had been able to eavesdrop on the elders and hear everything they said. "So, now that Morgaine has been chosen as fallen, they feel me unworthy of her and are trying to replace me," he thought. Now, it made more sense why Sephraim Initiate Blythe had said, "That little girl, I really hope she's just your sister and nothing more. Now it all makes sense. Unworthy, huh? Ryuk thought to himself, and for a few seconds, it all began disappearing from his heart. The world around him grew so frigid that the air blowing across 1,000 kilometers suddenly stopped altogether. The sudden change was impossible for anyone to ignore, as they all turned to look at him. I'll end him now, Elder Nogara muttered to himself as the dark tattoo on his arm floated off his hand and slowly melded into the air above him, soon wrapping together. Fall! The sound of crackling rang out as pitch-black lightning descended from the high heavens, slamming down onto Elder Nogara with unmatched rage. When they reached the top of his arms, they paused before wrapping together. The void splintered, space shattering into nothing, and a tiny black hole slithered out as the dark lightning quickly began merging to form a gigantic ball of dark lightning. He's sacrificing part of his fallen tattoos for his first attack? And isn't that the Dark Angel Sphere art? Murmurs erupted all around from Elder Nogara's brewing attack, and even the Eternity Guards, all standing around, felt their skin peeling off from the mere aura of the attack. But they all held their ground, bearing the pain with clenched teeth, while making sure the area was locked down to prevent his escape. A smile of victory appeared on Elder Nogara's lips as his gaze turned to look at Ryuk, whose head remained down, eyes staring at the Chusen in his hands. Just because you carry the Chosen One won't spare you, boy. The attack recognizes those with the Dominaire Fallen bloodline, and hence only you will be dying, he thought to himself as he finally completed the attack, and then, kaboom! He took a single step forward, the entire ground beneath him sinking into an unending abyss. His body lunged forward like a loosed bough, faint blood rushing from his lips from how much strain he placed on his body, and then, space was blown into nothing as the gigantic ball of dark lightning was hurled toward Ryuk. Black holes surged all around the ball as the attack raced forward with enough power to completely erase even an Apocrypha stage being. It's not personal, kid. It's just business. Dominaire Fallen Art. Dark Angel Sphere. While the entire world spiraled into unending chaos, the various elders holding their breath as they looked in horror at him, wondering if he would be outright erased from existence or if he would resist the attack. Endlessly rippling black holes surging forward toward him, and yet Ryuk remained motionless, as if oblivious to it all. Only one word was echoing in his head. Unworthy. 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 It was like a broken cassette, chipping again and again and again, each one leading to his beating heart, slowing down its tempo. The world completely quieted down, all emotions drowned out, and eventually, only one emotion remained within him. Rage. Hey system, he called, but he didn't need to explain more when the notification panel flashed. Congratulations, host. The special skill fusion of host's most powerful techniques, Draconic Overlord and True Art, Frostborn Calamity Frost Dragon, has been completed. The combined fusion of these skills has led to the birth of a new skill, Beyonder Dragon. Does host wish to see the skill panel of the new skill? The host must know there are. Activate Beyonder Dragon. The instant he gave the order, the world responded, and it did so by falling into silence. Through the silence, a faint thump of a beating heart resounded. An invisible ripple of energy spread through the entirety of the Dominaire family grounds, resulting in the entire world coming to a silent halt. The spiraling black holes halted in their destructive shape. The approaching ball of dark lightning paused in its track. Elder Nogara's triumphant victory smile froze on his lips. The various elders around, some with pitiful expressions, some with uncaring looks, all had their faces frozen in place, and the same for the guards, who were being scorched by the flaming ball, their facial expressions stuck in the process of their pain. But an outsider to it all might wonder why they stopped. Soon enough, they would get their answer by staring at the place where all attention had previously been focused. It was none other than the place where Ryuk stood. A transformation was currently ongoing there. A phase unlike any other witnessed or recorded in the current world timeline. A phase into a Beyonder Dragon. When Ryuk felt the singular thump of his chest, it came with an unbearable feeling. The feeling of his heart burning within him. It was as if his heart had contained a sealed core of lava, and now, with the chains shattered, that suppressed force erupted through him. It spread incredibly rapidly through his entire body, changing it, and the first of its changes was his height. From his previous 2.5 meters, his skeletal system grew, reaching exactly 3 meters, the height needed for his body to bear this new power without breaking. There was no muscle burst, nor a dramatic roar, just growth. And after that, they began to form around his skin one by one. Scales. White scales, soft at first. Afterward, they sharpened into a polished layer of smooth crystal. They were neither jagged nor rough, simply flawless, covering every inch of his skin, until they replaced it entirely. There were neither runes nor symbols on the scales, just pure white, with a surface that caught the light like frosted obsidian glass. Next came the crown. Shards of ocean blue ice rose into the air above his head. They seemed to phase out of the void, each arranging in a circular formation, forming a total of 6 that enveloped around his head. The space around them began humming, although it made no sound. They didn't glow, nor did they burn. They simply existed, circling him. And the final change was Ryuk's eyes. His previous eyes held a left color of blue and a right of crimson, a representation of his draconic and null bloodline. But then, the blue in his left eye, representing his draconic bloodline, started to spread into his right, entirely erasing the crimson color of his null bloodline. The blue in both eyes began spinning. Ah! An incredibly deep exhale of frost left Ryuk's lips, space freezing from its coldness. He raised his head to the crawling ball of crackling fallen lightning and black holes. His left hand held the body in his arms securely, while his right hand stretched outward toward the ball of energy. Immediately upon doing so, time seemed to resume. The ball appeared right before his scaly white fingers. Yet, when it reached 3 inches before his fingers, the entire world witnessed an unbelievable scene. The black hole, which let loose a horrific consumption force, suddenly began unraveling 3 inches before his scaly white fingers. Soon enough, they had dissolved altogether, leaving just the flaming ball of fallen lightning. When the ball reached 3 meters before him, its edges started to unravel as well. Yet it persisted, coming to a crashing halt, lightning undulating along with the crackling of space. The sound that echoed was like glass shattering over and over. In response, Ryuk curled one of his outstretched fingers against his palm before flicking out toward the ball. When the fingers struck the ball, the entirety of space rippled forward like glass, coating the ball of flame lightning. Then, before the shocked and disbelieving eyes of the crowd, the ball of fallen lightning reversed. It was a scene never before witnessed by Elder Nogara, one of the most powerful arts of the Dominaire family, a family that was one of the 3 greatest among the fallen angels, the Dominaire Fallen Arts, a name that struck fear into the hearts of even the mighty angels themselves, for it was filled with a law that seemed specially made to counter their angelic essence. Within this art were about 7 other techniques, each stronger than the last, and the 3rd strongest of these was the Dark Angel Sphere. It was a technique more than difficult to grasp, but ever since he had practiced this art, none of his opponents had ever escaped it without dying or crippled. Many had lost their lives to it, and those who survived? He received the news of their deaths just a couple of hours later. It was feared and could never be challenged, unless by an equal technique in power. Yet what was this scene? The scene of his own art, his best ally, turning its back on him and racing forward in his direction. It didn't move fast. In fact, it somehow seemed agonizingly slow. But it was all that filled his entire vision. And when the image of the ball finally left his gaze, all he heard was, his eyes were lost, and he couldn't explain it. There was no shock, nor surprise, as Elder Nogara inched his right hand toward his left side. There, in the place where his ribs and stomach ought to be, all he felt was a liquid that streamed down his arm. He brought it to his face, and saw the dark liquid, his blood. How? Was the thought that echoed in his head. But he wasn't alone. The last vestige of strength left his body, and then, it was the sound of knees collapsing onto the ground. Silence. Not forced but chosen. The crowd, various elders with their breaths stuck in their throats, mouths agape in disbelief, and surrounding guards whose jaws dropped even farther. They were close to the scene. They saw everything, and disbelief filled their eyes. All the gaze moved between the scaled young man cradling the unconscious Chosen in his hands to the pathetic-looking one who kneeled before him, with half of his upper body missing, his head drooping low in defeat. How? How? Ryuk's raised right hand, which gradually recoiled back to his side, sent another reality that shook their hearts. One move. A mighty elder from the mighty Dominaire family had been defeated with a single move. But to Ryuk there was nothing. It was like his ability to feel anything had been burned off his heart, leaving just rage that had shifted into absolute indifference. He willed to move, and all the crowd saw was him fading into the thin void. A moment later, he was just a few centimeters away from the kneeling Elder Nogara, as if he had been standing there since the beginning of time. His hand reached forward, his palm resting on the elder's head. Then his fingers shifted into sharp claws that gripped the elder's head, raising him into the air, his feet dangling above the ground. He will kill him. The realization rang through the elders' minds, right after which, kaboom! Explosions erupted from the top of each building. Powerful waves of aura burst into the sky as various elders unleashed their full strength, bursting forward toward Ryuk with incredible speed. But then, without lifting his head, his lips moved. Halt! The moment those words were uttered, everything came to a crashing halt. The elders, flying furiously toward Ryuk to save Elder Nogara, all froze in midair, stuck in their charging positions. The various guards who tried to back off, knowing full well the chaos that was about to ensue, also halted in their retreating poses. But even though they were halted, their minds and eyes still worked perfectly, enabling them to see the scene before them. One attack had been enough to utterly break through the defense of Elder Nogara, rendering him motionless, and following after Ryuk's claw began sinking into his skull. The clear sound of a skull being steadily shattered rang out, an even more horrific scene to the elders, whose aura blasted outward with even more power as they tried to escape the hold of the technique, yet failed. Teeth clenched in anger and helplessness, but all eyes were forced to watch the slow execution of an elder of the Dominaire family. Please, forgive me, please, for, and smoother flow. The words rang out through the lips of Elder Nogara, who felt life slipping silently from him. Even though rendered motionless, he could still feel his brain gradually being turned to mush by the aura leaking from the claws piercing into his skull. But it was too late. No amount of begging could reach this Ryuk. The sound of cracking skull continued, and just when a vein popped on through his scales, giving him the final vestige of strength to completely blow the head into mush, a hand stretched forward. In an area where all motion apart from his was locked down, the sight of its appearance was more than eye-catching. And that hand belonged to the one he held in his arms. Don't! The whisper rang out from none other than Morgane, who woke up to the scene of Elder Nogara's head about to be crushed. Her hand stretched out, grasping onto Ryuk's outstretched hand, watching as his motion stopped. His whirlpool blue eyes turned to look at hers. Let him go, please, she uttered once more, and in that instant, a flicker. It danced through the whirlpool of blue, which, for a heartbeat, stopped spinning. From within those cold blue eyes, she felt that familiar gaze of his return. And like one electrocuted, Ryuk's claws released, resulting in Elder Nogara crumpling to the ground. The world, which had been halted, shattered, as the various elders found themselves able to move once more. In an instant, one of them burst forward with speed, grabbing Elder Nogara before they all quickly retreated 500 meters into the distance, watching Ryuk from afar. They had decided not to engage him in the end, choosing to save Elder Nogara and retreat. Without wasting another moment, Ryuk's feet hovered off the ground, Morgane in his arms, and half a second later, A pillar of milky white light burst through the sky as he vanished into the clouds, fading completely from view. All that was left was absolute silence, as two of the elders instantly disappeared with the wounded body of Elder Nogara, and the others stared at each other wordlessly. The unimportant existence whom they had planned to kill to let their chosen find a better partner of their choice had ended up defeating, and almost killing, one of their elders. And he had done it with just a single move, while also halting them in place with a simple command that, even with all their strength, they were unable to overcome. Now they had an inkling into how monstrous a being the one in a relationship with their chosen truly was. Ryuk had not traveled for a kilometer when it caught up to him. A sudden weakness that gnawed at his soul. In the next instant, his body paused in the air, his hold on Morgaine wavering before his eyes slowly shut, and he fell from the sky. But he hadn't gotten far when her arms caught him. Heart-pounding, Morgaine looked at Ryuk in her arms. He was changing. The shards hanging around his head quietly slipped into the void, and the various scales on his skin began to withdraw, leaving bare his white, glassy skin once more. But then, her breath halted when she noticed something abnormal. Her fingers reached for his neck. She waited silently, but 2 seconds later, her mouth hung agape. Boom! The clouds parted backward, whistling as Morgaine flew forward with speed, rushing toward a particular building in the Dominaire Royal ground. The realization echoed continuously in her head. He's not breathing.